Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. The trailer, Andy, is an exercise in hyperbolic language.
That is true.
Andy, I think if you were going to keep it true to the trailer, you would have to say that is the most true thing ever.
Yes.
That is totally, that is what it is. This is the frankest motion picture ever made. I don't know what that means.
Well, it's pretty frank, I guess.
I guess.
Although there's no one named Frank in it.
There is no way. I would expect, based on your Detroit gauge, there should be more Franks in this movie.
No, the Detroit gauge means that this would have to take place in a town that is east of Eden.
And it is not.
And it's not.
There should be no metaphor, judging by the Detroit gauge. The trailer is, it's actually a fantastic trailer of the time. It is really entertaining to watch in and of itself. I find I just chuckle at every next hyperbolic line. And it's just sort of beautiful as a piece. It's kind of a piece of small cinematic art. The way they introduce the characters in the trailer. I'm not sure it wouldn't. I'm not sure it would make me want to see the movie if I wasn't already a Steinbeck fan. But it was certainly entertaining to see.
Well, they hit that right out of the gate as far as Steinbeck showing the book as the entry point for the trailer.
I think it's the longest single shot in the trailer.
That is a really, really long hold on that book. What I thought was interesting is it's actually movie trailer guy and movie trailer girl working in conjunction on this one. That was a really strange twist, is that we had both of them speaking.
That's so progressive.
And it really was.
I wonder if she was an impatient girl who turned into a desirable woman.
I loved this. This line in the trailer makes it sound like Warner Brothers is really just like the place to capture for you the stark realism of people who love so deeply, hate so deeply, live so recklessly. Warner Brothers had to seek out vibrant new personalities, tap new sources of talent, create new stars. That's how big this story is, Pete, that they had to just start all over again. It's
so big, and Warner, it just is such an ego trailer. I know that's just sort of how they talk to themselves, about themselves of the era, but can you imagine, Universal had to make another Mummy, I mean, can you imagine that kind of language in today's trailer? I cannot. It is, they are quite proud of themselves.
You know what's really funny is this came out the year that Marty came out, and I don't know if you remember the trailer for Marty, but that was its own peculiar trailer because that's the one where it had, I believe it was Burt Lancaster who was producing it, and it was him like talking about the importance of the story and what you were about to see and all that sort of stuff. And you hardly saw any bit of the movie. It was mostly just him talking to you about what you're going to see.
Yeah, he's like making the case.
Right.
Listen, I need you to see this motion picture. I need you to watch it, please. I sunk a lot of dough.
So
that's my Burt Lancaster. What'd you think of that?
That was probably the worst. I don't know.
I'm not sure I could. I don't know what Burt Lancaster sounds like right now, so I was rolling the dice.
Well, it was something. It was something, that's for sure.
It's the decade's most daring novel.
Such startling characters.
Such untamed emotions.
Now it's the frankest motion picture ever made.
Yes, life in its every emotion leaps from the pages of John Steinbeck's best of all his bestsellers. And to bring new vitality to every explosive chapter, to capture for you the stark realism of people who love so deeply, hate so fiercely, live so recklessly, Warner Brothers had to seek out vibrant new personalities, tap new sources of talent, create new stars. James Dean as Cal, the wildest boy you've ever met. Julie Harris as Abra, the most outspoken girl you've ever known. Jo Van Fleet as Kate, the most wicked woman you've ever seen. And all the other memorable figures who form a dramatic cavalcade that moves across California's lustiest era and her most colorful locale.
This is The Next Reel, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that over there is Andy Nelson.
Hey.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, we're going to say hello to our mothers in a little place just east of Eden to kick off our series on the films of that hunky James Dean. Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com, subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel.
And if you enjoy tuning in and are interested in supporting our ongoing work investigating great film, please consider a regular donation through our Patreon page. You'll get to join our back-channel conversations on Discord, help us pick movies for upcoming series, and listen to the members-only weekend show, The Saturday Matinee, where we talk movies, trailers, box office, and more. Plus, we have a battle of the lists of movies related to our show that week. In honor of the film we're talking about tonight, this week's list will be movies featuring brothers at odds. Just head on over to patreon.com/thenextreel.
How come you did it?
Did what?
Shot my father.
Because he tried to hold me. He tried to tie me down. Nobody holds me.
East of Eden, Andy, what'd you think? Do you like this movie? You hadn't seen it.
I had not seen this. John Steinbeck is an author who has one of his novels, Grapes of Wrath, is one of my favorite novels. It really is just a story that really always hit with me. That being said, I haven't read many of his other novels. I never read this. I did read Of Mice and Men. I'm trying to think what else I read of his. Not much. And so this really was largely a new story for me. And coming into it, I did enjoy it. It's I think it was very big. It was broad. I kind of enjoyed all of those elements. I was, after watching it, it actually made me more curious to read the book, because looking at it, it looks like they only adapted chapters 39 through 55 of the book when they wrote the script. They left out a huge portion of it. So I'm very curious now about the rest of the story. But James Dean is really the reason that we are doing this series, largely because he was this flash in the pan who really burst onto the scene with this film and the next two, and then died in a terrible accident. And this is kind of our memory of him. But he hit so strongly because he captured kind of that teenage angst at the time, and kind of people's the way that people were reacting to society and everything, particularly the teenagers. And I think looking at it from that perspective, it's really interesting to see what James Dean is doing here, and kind of how big he is. And yes, he's very much kind of a big actor, but it made for a film that I really enjoyed watching. I felt like the characters were really interesting. Sometimes I really struggled with kind of the ultra moralistic nature of the father and the brother, and to a certain extent the ultra naive nature of the brother. But you have to look at it as the time when things were really starting to shift. And I think that part I struggled with, but for the most part, I enjoyed it.
I don't know how many times I've seen this movie. I think maybe only once, and then some other times when it was on around my house. I think my mom really enjoyed East of Eden, and I know we had it growing up, but it was not. It's not one that I remember having a very strong connection to, and I would say this is. I'm there with it here too. I don't have a really strong attention to it. I feel exactly the same way that you do about some of the naivety of the brother, the way he was sort of played as a pawn, both kind of politically, but and sort of zealously, religiously with the dad. That relationship, I don't really relate to it. I don't remember the book. I read it in college, I think, and I just never had really a connection with it either. And so the movie, I really, after last week's film, I really enjoyed not having a very strong opinion of this movie. It's delightful. I am fascinated by James Dean and watching him again in this movie, particularly in light of just watching him as and I don't know, maybe you would disagree, but I think he's our Tom Cruise, or our Brad Pitt is this generation's James Dean. Would you agree? Is that kind of what is that a fair parallel?
Yeah, like if you take Tom Cruise from 86 to 87, and you look at because
the 15 movies that he did that year.
Right. But Top Gun, All the Right Moves. If you kind of look in that short period where he probably did a number of things that really put him on the map and made people just Tom Cruise crazy. Yes, then I think that's, for our generation, that's probably a pretty good analogy. I think Brad Pitt, you could say that Brad Pitt almost, I would say, is a little more James Dean, because he also seems a little edgier. Tom Cruise seems a little more on the just less on the edge, more on the the excitement side of things. But Brad Pitt, I could see, he's an actor who has taken more risk with some of his performances, and just when you think he's getting used to kind of these big poster boy sorts of roles, all of a sudden he does something really off the wall, like California or something.
Yeah, right. That's exactly. And so, we certainly can't say that this, as Dean's first feature film, is one of those like big budget films. I mean, could we even make a parallel to Risky Business or something like that? I know that's back to Cruise, but it just made me think of these guys. Like if we had lost them, how would we feel about looking at their first three movies? And I sort of had to put myself in that headspace to look at James Dean and to look at what what he delivers here, and to read about his performance, his sort of emotional method. That, the number of times he was brought to weeping, like legitimately weeping off camera because of the work that he was doing on camera and the relationships that he had with people, at just the level of depth with which he felt life. I as reported by those, who are writing about him, I find really fascinating. And he puts it all on screen. And that I was enormously entertained by in this film.
Yeah, and that's what I think is really interesting, and that is what I think going to be an interesting thing for us to explore over these next 3 films is what is James Dean bringing to the performance here? How is he kind of expressing the youth of the time and their kind of attitudes and beliefs, and why did they tap into him so greatly, and all of that. I think it's really interesting because it is, if you step back and just kind of look at it as just a performance, it is full of histrionics. I mean, it's just very big and grandiose, and he's contorting himself, and his face, like he moves his face in such interesting ways, and like the moment when he's like looking at the beans sprouting and he starts dancing through the different rows of beans, and he's big, and you're right, he puts everything out there, and that's what's so interesting about him. So I'm excited to see how he continues growing over the next couple films.
So let's knock a couple of initial thoughts about this movie then, get those off the board. We've got the brooding of James Dean. What's the next thing that struck you as fascinating about the movie? Number 2.
I think Elia Kazan and the way that he chose to shoot this, I think, is probably the next thing for me that really stood out. This was 1955 Cinemascope, and I was expecting kind of the big images, the widescreen stuff. Even though, as a side note here, Pete, I will say I was very disappointed to see that Amazon, which is where I watched it, they show the Cinemascope, the real widescreen Cinemascope, just during the titles, and then as soon as the movie starts, it drops it back to 16:9. So I could tell that we were still going back to pan and scan, even though it's not 4:3 TVs anymore. It still is doing that pan and scan shuffle as they're really filling the frame from edge to edge. So
I got mine on iTunes, and it does not do that.
So you had
I got the full widescreen. Yeah.
Lucky man.
What can I say?
I should have gone that route, knowing that they had a fantastic Blu-ray transfer a few years back.
Yeah.
So I may have to. I don't know if Rebel was shot Cinemascope, but if it is, I might have to go iTunes instead of Amazon, because I'm guessing Amazon pulls the same trick. So
yeah, I probably.
But anyway, back to the camera work. I was just really impressed with the way that Kazan and his DP Ted McCord shot this film, and they played with Dutch angles and just the compositions, the way that they filled frames for what is essentially kind of a family drama. You didn't see Cinemascope films about family dramas much at this time. It was usually the big westerns or the big, kind of the action films types of things. This was kind of an odd choice to do in Cinemascope, and it was Kazan's first Cinemascope, and it was his DP's first Cinemascope. And so they're like, hey, let's push this to the limits and see what we can do. So it gave them freedom to really kind of play around with compositions. And I was just loving some of the way that they came up with beautiful imagery throughout this film.
I was too. I found that, some of these sequences were quite jarring. As you say, well, in my rarefied case, the super wide screen that I was enjoying while you were panning and scanning all over the screen, I found it really jarring as they would zoom in. And I read that that one of the trade-offs that they'd made in the in shooting in Cinemascope was that when you get so close, they were instructed based on those cameras not to get any closer than 6 feet, and that apparently really from the subject that apparently really rubbed Kazan the wrong way. And so they ran a lot of tests and discovered we can get closer to the subject, but it's going to distort the edge of the frame. what, let's distort the edge of the frame. And you can see it in so many wonderful sequences, and it adds a fantastic sense of otherworldliness to these scenes where, where it's a scene of great intensity, or it's great. It just makes you feel like you're sort of living outside of Cal's body as he's moving through this world. I think it's really wonderful. And they did a lot of stuff with like attaching that camera to movement. So they would tilt at an off angle, and particularly, we'll talk about in the deep scene dive, is they move with the subject back and forth, for example, like on a swing, or as they're tilting around a conversation. I think that sense of movement, again, it feels like you're on a boat. It's really jarring, and I loved it.
That was a sure sign as I put this on. I was like, man, they did some really, really unique stuff here. Yeah. So that was a thrill. Next to that, I found it really kind of an interesting story. This whole Cain and Abel adaptation angle, where Steinbeck really kind of pulled this biblical story of brother against brother and brought it into this world here. I'm really curious to see what Steinbeck did with the rest of the story, because I feel like there's a lot more that probably leads up to where the boys are by the time we get to them. But that being said, I enjoyed the story quite a bit. I enjoyed having kind of this Cain and Abel analogy. And I think there were times where I did struggle with it. Sometimes it just seemed like, oh, James Dean is just being bad because he knows he's the bad one, and his brother is so good. And it was a little too much. And so I was a little frustrated, but I think what really made it work for me was by the time we get to the end and we have that big climax, which really shook me. I was really surprised that that's where it went. But at the same time, I'm like, of course he's gonna take his brother to Mom, because he's the bad one. And what was so interesting to me is even Mom, what a great character she is, she's just so enamored by her son Cal, and she's always like, "You're such a good boy, Cal." I can't remember what she's saying, but he proves even to her that no, I'm the bad one, by thrusting the good son at her. It was really quite a powerful turn that the story took. But then it gave us an ending that I found so satisfying. So it took me on quite a ride, this story, and I really enjoyed that nature of it.
I found it interesting. I wanted more out of the mother's storyline, and I was frustrated because I wanted so much more and I didn't get it. I felt like the resolution, the say hello to your mother, that was such a wonderful lead up that he is the bad one, but also he's the good one. He's taking sort of control of removing secrets from the family line, and that is something to be lauded in so many other narratives. And so why not here? Let's remove the barriers that we have between us. Let's get it all out on the table and just see what happens. That's something that is in other circumstances heroic. So look at him subverting the "I'm the bad one" storyline, and doing it in a way that it's a hurtful demonstration, but otherwise could be seen as kind of a heroic move. I actually liked that, and it was such a short scene. I wanted more. I wanted more earned sort of rage and response, and then just closing the door and having him just sort of skip down the hallway. I found it left me feeling a little bit empty. So that was frustrating, especially because I so love Jo Van Fleet as Kate. I thought she was such a wonderful performance, even as brief as it was.
Yeah, she was one of those actresses in this film, and I was racking my brains. I'm like, I don't know if I've seen her in anything before. She was really compelling as this woman and made a very interesting turn. I mean, she's really kind of the first person that we're following, right? We see her right out of the gate as she's off to the bank to get some money, and then we see Cal following her. I don't know. I just found her really compelling. I guess she was in Cool Hand Luke.
Cool Hand Luke.
Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah, very interesting woman.
I felt like I wanted more out of her entire story. Yeah, this is me, being a Steinbeck revisionist. I was far more interested in her at the brothel than I was at the Bible family in the ice house and the lettuce refrigerator. Like that was just not a thing I was into at all. So it was really hard for me to be interested in what was going on at their house. I wanted to go back to the seedy part of town.
Well, it certainly makes for a darker element of the story, and I think that's why it's more compelling. But I do think that when Cal was dealing with his father and his brother, that dynamic I found really interesting. Like when Cal, they're fighting at the dinner table, and his father makes him read from the Bible, and just the way that the animosity that he has as he's reading, is just really, really interesting. So I enjoyed that quite a bit.
Yeah, I enjoy that too. And both of the scenes of confrontation, the scene, it's interesting. The scene we're not talking about specifically, the birthday party. It's a tough sequence to watch. I don't have any siblings, but I imagine if I had one like this, I would punch him in the neck a lot.
The relationship between Cal and his brother is a really interesting one. And that's something that I found, I don't know. I don't know the story, but the element of fighting over the sister, I wasn't as in love with. Not the sister, but fighting over the girlfriend, I wasn't as in love with it. I enjoyed that element because I think she makes a great person for Cal to play off of. But I struggled with the I don't know, just some of that dynamic, and I really was more interested in everything going on between the brothers. So, and maybe it's I really do enjoy Julie Harris quite a bit, but there's something about the character of Abra that I just wasn't as crazy for.
I like Abra after Aron leaves. Right.
Yeah, like the end.
She turns the end, right? She turns, and maybe it's even after their sequence on the Ferris wheel. They have their kiss and their lamented, regretful kiss, and then he climbs down, which is, I would never do that. I don't think. I think something would have to be straight up on fire to have me climb off of a Ferris wheel. That would be tough going. I might root for whatever's going on down below. I might do some cheering, but I wouldn't climb down. He climbs down and he jumps off, and there's that great shot where he's like jumping down on the camera, which is fantastic. And from then on, she is kind of a different character. She takes on much more of a much more of a strong kind of caretaker role, and she takes a much more active role in pushing Cal toward his father, and in that final sequence, which I think is strong, and so I like her. I like her much better than I thought. She was kind of a drip in the first half of the movie,
and maybe that was my struggle with her. And I mean, to that end, I guess that's how she's supposed to be. She's supposed to be kind of written that way, but I don't know. It was a little more frustrating for me. I do enjoy her more at the end, as she has a better tie between Cal and the father, and is the kind of the catalyst that brings them together.
Burl Ives, Andy. Burl Ives. He's an adorable man.
I find it so funny to watch Burl Ives in films because, I mean, he's one of those actors that as a kid, you grow up with Burl Ives in a very particular way. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, he's the snowman in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He's in all those cheesy old Disney movies like Summer Magic. He's all those kids albums. Like, I have so many records, or I had so many records of Burl Ives just singing all these kid songs. Like, he was one of those guys. And then as you grow up, you start seeing him in some of the performances that he was in. It's like, oh, this is not the person that I knew was singing me those songs as a kid. Now, granted, this is really not that bad of a performance. I mean, he's fine as the sheriff here. It's more like looking at it as Big Daddy or something, or in Cat in a Hot
Yeah, exactly. Cat in a Hot Tin Roof.
Oh my goodness.
Well, I love that I finally made the connection. I don't think I had ever made the connection between this film and Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, that he is Sam the Snowman in Rudolph and Sam the Sheriff here. Please tell me that's intentional. It's an embarrassing accident of awesome. Naming. But you're exactly right. Although I characterize him as certainly more than fine in this movie. I thought his the scene where he stops the fight in front of the German's house was great. I actually really enjoyed that sequence. I thought he was, the level of sort of social subservience that the town shows to him, in spite of their rage, I thought was really great as he's kind of wandering around and acknowledging everybody by name, that there's no mob scene here because I know you all. You are all individuals. I thought that was a wonderful twist.
Yeah, no, I agree there. I agree. You know that he has a Star Wars connection?
Oh, do tell.
He's the narrator in the Ewok adventure.
Oh. Well. Look, wait, Andy, I just forgot that little tidbit. It was in, and now I forgot it again. That was so fast.
Oh, you.
Thank goodness.
Oh, you.
Good grief.
Yeah.
Should we talk about the Germans? Speaking of the fight in front of the house?
Yeah.
Do not like the Germans in this movie.
Boy, and that was interesting because this film takes place World War I, or right at the start.
Right at the start of World War I.
And the film was released in 1955. So it's just an interesting thing to have kind of that element of this vitriol spewed toward Germans, in particular this one German who lives in town. And so to kind of be taking this position of, hey, not everybody's that bad. It struck me as, wow, this seems like, I wonder if this was a thing at the time when this came out where people were talking about it like, oh, I can't believe that. Or it opened people's eyes to, not everybody's a Nazi or something. It was an odd little thing to be thrown in here.
No, I think you're right. And I think it is interesting. And I think it was sort of softly peddled as they're trying to protect him and have, keep him safe behind his picket fence, which was summarily destroyed. Wow. That was one of the most interesting little set design pieces that in the midst of this fight, that there were people who were taking down the white picket fence. And there was something about that to me. And I don't mean this as a joke. Like, this is a dismantling, a systematic dismantling of the American dream. And we're going to do it post by post. And in some cases, we might, there might be a sequence of somebody trying to, beat somebody else up with a stick. But there were people carrying whole sections of fence off of specifically a white picket fence in the middle of the yard. And I thought that was, that actually struck me, doing that to the house where a German lives in 1940. 38, 39, whenever. I thought that was really interesting.
And possibly unintentionally funny when Burl Ives interrupts the fight. There's that guy standing behind him who's got like a 10-foot chunk of fence.
Yes.
And he's just holding it up in the air like, what were you going to do with that?
Yeah, right. I needed a fence, and I was going to take this one.
The roses were next.
You say that like a joke, but we had a flower thief when I was growing up. There was this neighborhood lady who would go from house to house and very systematically dig up people's flowers and replant them in her own yard. That's a real thing, flower thievery.
I have never heard of that before, and I'm shocked that people go to such lengths.
They go on their morning walks with some paper bags or some plastic bags, and they will dig up at the roots and leave little holes in your yard.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Thieves.
I heard it where people do the opposite, where they actually will graft branches of one type of tree onto another tree, so that it kind of hybridizes. And it's one of those things like, why are they going to those lengths? I don't know. I guess they really wanted lemons to grow on that lime
front
tree.
Yard. I tried to imagine somebody sneaking into up to my house and doing that. Like, they are playing a very long game. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going to hybridize a tree in your yard, hope you don't notice, for 2 seasons, but then I'll be back.
It's what the emperor would do.
Meanwhile, Back east of Eden. Let's do the DSD, Andy.
Let's do it.
I chose this scene, and I chose this scene. I think, well, at least I proposed this scene, and you agreed to this scene because it has the line. I don't know. I'm not my brother's keeper. I felt like that we had to honor the word because of the Bible stuff and because of the book, and it's kind of a big moment in this sequence. Abra is reading to Adam in the chair after a big blow up in the house, and we have Cal who comes back. This is immediately after Cal has escorted Aron to Aron to meet Mom. And so we have had that unveiling, and now he's coming back, Cal, to confront Dad. And so we start this about an hour 41, an hour 42, where Abra is reading to Adam, and we see Cal through the glass window of the front door at the far end of the house, and again making great use of that really wide screen. When we get the whole, it seems like the whole first floor of the house. Not that you would know from your version. I'm sure there's a lot of scanning.
Wow.
Panning. Yeah. Oh, I'm going to keep pushing that one. What do you think of this scene?
This scene really does exhibit quite a bit of unique work going on here. The performance, I mean, you've got a very big, grandiose performance from James Dean here, opposite Raymond Massey as his father, Adam. You can really sense the tension between the two of them. It's largely their scene. Julie Harris does have a bit as Abra here, and I think she is pretty solid in this scene too. You get some really fantastic camera work in this scene too, which is really great to see. I mean, the just the way that the very first moment of this sequence is framed. Before James Dean gets to the house, it's this overhead shot. You're really high angle looking down on her as she's reading to Adam, and it's kind of a Dutch angle, and you have these streamers cutting diagonally across the frame, right across the father, which makes for a really, really exciting and interesting composition that just unsettles you. And then, of course, you pan over and you see James Dean in all his craziness come over before he gets onto the swing. And then you get just the craziest bit of camera work in this film that I was never expecting to see in a film from this era.
It's interesting. It was blocked like a play. Like I could, and I think we see that a lot when we see movies in this era when you have these wonderful stages, and so the blocking was interesting. That we move from in the house through the house, we can see the set outside, and they start with Cal on the swinging out and back and out and back, and as his dad comes out and meets him, that's where we see the sort of collision. It felt like a collision between stage blocking, creative, clever stage blocking, and this giant widescreen camera. It felt like just sort of history and technology smashing headlong into one another, and it created this fantastic mix over the course of about a minute of the camera moving to try to capture all of the movement of Cal on the swing and Dad on the porch, and it was just really magical. I felt like it was right in their fight. Not to mention some of the strongest writing in the sequences as they resolve some of the more active visuals. And Cal is about to leave, and he says, I took Aron over there tonight because I was jealous. I've been jealous all my life, so jealous I couldn't even stand it. Tonight I tried to buy your love, but now I don't want it anymore. I can't use it anymore. And that just hit me right in the chest. Just beautiful.
Well, and this exhibits so much of the greatness of James Dean, especially when he has that real sense of anger in his character. I mean, He is vicious to his father. The way that he delivers those lines, like, he's with her, he's with his mother. The way that he says it, it just has so much hate and anger, and all of that resentment for everything that's happened, and all the love that he's never received. Brilliant performance by James Dean, and the way that Raymond Massey plays opposite that, just kind of, once he knows what's going on, he just kind of collapses into that chair, and it's almost like he just sinks further and further as Dean continues talking. And he's a man who is just broken, and it's a beautiful, beautiful battle between these two men as one man is just really loses out to his son and realizes kind of all the errors of his ways.
I don't want that kind of love anymore. It doesn't pay off. There's no future in it, right? And that's a fantastic callback from the father, to the very beginning of the movie when they're, checking out this ice house, trying to look at what pays off in terms of the future of food storage. The whole. It seems like that's an interesting sort of arc, a parallel between kind of the practical, the development of his business and the development of his relationship with his family. And I found that really touching.
It really is tragic. But again, that's why I found such strength in this film, and really in Steinbeck's writing, the way they adapted it, the way that Kazan told it in cinematic fashion here, the way that we build to that climax when his father has had a stroke and is in bed, and the way that this relationship, we see the real tearing asunder of this relationship in this scene. I mean, it's been going on all their lives, but this is that final moment, really the last straw. But then you get that moment with Dean and his father, when his father's had a stroke and can't speak. Just beautifully haunting moment as he ends up saying, "I'm going to stay with him. I'm going to be here," and he stays with his father, and that was one of the most beautiful payoffs that I really was never expecting.
I wasn't expecting it either, and I found myself walking away from it a little bit dissatisfied. It had to age on me because I sort of wanted Dad to die. I felt like that was going to be, the darker payoff on this film, right? That it's going to end kind of sad, and in the end we get a resolution. Even if it's a resolution with a ticking clock, and one of the best moments of the movie in terms of the dark humor is the conversation between the nurse and Abra when Abra says, tell me like it is. Tell me the truth. Tell me what's really going to happen. And the nurse says, you're not the family, right? I mean, I can be straight with you. Yeah, you can be straight with me. Man, do I hate these jobs where I get them when they're on the way out. I don't remember what the line is, but she's just like,
basically that, yeah.
Boy, I know I'm not going to be here very long. And that is, I felt like if I've guffawed at a movie recently, this is what that is. That's just kind of sound of, she's so good. I just love that moment. And so that actually makes the payoff at the ending even better. So it had to age on me a little bit again, that final sequence, because I'm not sure I expected the any sort of familial resolution, and I expected the brooding James Dean to go off into the get back on a train. There are such great train sequences when he's sitting on the top of this train, moving towards tunnels and passing trains, and I sort of expected that, but this was it was really quite lovely.
These are some elements that were in the book as far as building to the end. And I wonder if they would have helped if these had been in the film, because the film, it's not like it was this 3-hour opus or anything like that. It could have done with 10 extra minutes and just been just fine. In the book,
I know there's a bit with the mother that would have helped me.
Right, because after the whole thing with Cal throwing Aron at their mother, and Aron flees, she is so racked with self-hatred that she signs her estate to Aron, and then she commits suicide. So that's how that whole storyline ends. And then Aron,
don't you think, though, I mean, as an aside, don't you think that resolves her storyline more satisfactorily? Like, we don't get an end to her story.
Exactly. And that's something that I was disappointed in, is that we don't ever come back to her again. And we really should have. And why they didn't, I think it was because Kazan, from reading about him and kind of what he was looking for in the story, it really was the father and son story. And so I think the mother was only there as a foil to throw Aron at. So to that end, I can see how it may have worked out that way, but I absolutely agree. We really are missing that closure. And then the other element is that Aron, he enlists to fight in the war, And then I think it just would have been too extended of story to have at this point in the film. He goes off to battle and he's killed in the last year of the war. And that is when Adam suffers his stroke, when he hears the news that Aron has died in battle. And then that's what brings Cal back to talk with him and everything.
Yeah, I don't remember that at all.
Well, but I felt like, having Aron die in battle would have been a nice impetus for that whole ending to happen, because then that's another nice resolution that we don't get. Although I do feel that it is a pretty powerful way to end it, where we don't know what's going to happen to Aron. We know he's kind of gone crazy and he's run off to fight in war. It leaves that a little open-ended, but we know it's probably not going to go well for him, because the last time we see him, he smashes his head through the train window and just cackles as the train drives away.
The next time we see him, he's changed his name to John Rambo. And he comes to a little Pacific Northwest lumber town.
Wow.
Ends up having to take... Yeah, people change in war.
Yes, they do.
Production design, back to our deep scene dive, Andy. Production design, James Basivi and Malcolm Burt. I just want to acknowledge that the production design, set design of these things, because it's hard to make these work and feel natural and to integrate with the filming of the staged work, and I think this was really well done. It was a beautiful world.
Everything about it. It felt very turn of the century, kind of that it takes place in that Monterey 1917, I think is when it starts, kind of that era. And I felt it. I felt like it had that lived in period feel. So I totally agree. The production designers here did a great job. Costume designer, they all worked really well to create this world that I bought into.
Now, what do you think of Leonard Rosenman's music?
I felt a little betrayed by Rosenman that he didn't bring any elements from East of Eden back when he did the Star Trek IV, The Voyage Home music.
Oh my God! Oh no! No!
Oh yes.
He was Nimoy's friend.
Yes, he was.
Oh, Andy. I didn't make that connection at all.
He's the one who ruined the Star Trek universe.
He's the one.
Music.
He broke Star Trek. Suddenly, this show just became so much more resonant.
It all is tied together, Pete.
Wow, well played. Oh, I need a break. Let's talk about Paul Osborne, who did the adaptation. Again, chapters 39 through 55. Is that what you said of the book, the last part of the book?
Right.
What do we think of the good Paul Osborne? He's been around a long time. I should say he was around a long time. But he wrote some movies that we might be familiar with. South Pacific, Sayonara, Brando.
I don't know if I have seen many of his films, if anything else that he had done. Maybe I'm trying to remember if I ever fully watched Mrs. Miniver. I don't think I did, but I think he's a screenwriter who fits in the era. I think he does an admirable job of adapting kind of from the source material. He had worked on uncredited an adaptation of Tortilla Flat back in the 40s, another Steinbeck novel. And so, he already had experience with kind of that Steinbeck world and the way that Steinbeck told his stories. And so, I think that he captured the essence of what, to me, again, not having read the novel, it feels like Steinbeck characters, though. And that's what I like here, is that it feels very much in that world.
I can't believe you haven't seen South Pacific.
I know.
I cannot believe that. That is a list of shame item for you, and we'll move on. Also, The Yearling. I can't believe you haven't seen The Yearling. I know. I was forced to watch it many times as a youth.
Really?
The Yearling.
Is that a horse movie?
Yes, it's a horse movie. I come from a strong line of horse people. Yeah, we're horse people. What of it? We've talked a little bit about Elia Kazan. Give us a little background on his work on this film.
This was his film that he did right after On the Waterfront. So, I mean, he was riding high as he kind of came into this project. And this was right after, or he had been working at Columbia. And I guess because of the high that he was at right here, Warner Brothers said, "Hey, come on over here. We'll let you do whatever you want to do next, and we'll give you your final cut and everything." And so he's like, "Yeah, that sounds great." And so he jumped ship with Columbia and went over to Warner Brothers to make this. And yes, he got final cut, and he got to bring along his color consultant, John Hambleton. Because this was his first color film. This was Kazan's first color film. It was also his first film in Cinemascope, as we already said. And so I think that this was just a story that really resonated with him. He had, what was it? Gosh, I'm trying to remember what it was that he had been working on. Something in the early 50s when Steinbeck was actually writing the novel. And he was, I think, one of the first people who Steinbeck let read it. And I guess it just really resonated with him because he had his own issues with his father. His father, I think, wanted him to take over their, I can't remember what it is, like a washing business or something like that. And his mother,
a washing business.
I don't remember what they did.
They wash stuff.
They wash things. And his mother wanted him to go to school and kind of pushed for that. And so it created a rift with his family because of that. And so I think that it was a rug merchant. That's what it was. His father was a rug merchant, totally different than the washing business.
Right. He didn't. And those rugs were decidedly unwashed.
Very unwashed. But he had his own issues. And then I think he saw in James Dean that same thing because James Dean had his own issues with his father. And that was something that Kazan really connected with this story. He connected with the character of Cal. He thought James Dean was the perfect person to play Cal. And even though he's like, he's kind of rough, he lacks technique, but there was something about him that he really connected with. But I think it was this was a film that was very personal to him because of the way that it connected to his personal life. The one thing about Kazan that I suppose is still relatively controversial is the fact that he is one of the people that testified for the House Committee on Un-American Activities.
Right.
And that is one of those things that created quite a rift. And I know when he got that honorary Oscar back in the late 90s, there were quite a few people in the audience who refused to applaud for him for having named names. So, yeah.
We've talked obviously about James Dean. One thing about James Dean and Ray Massey that I like so much, because you already said they were trying to ratchet up the angst between the two on scene, and I find it just delightful that Kazan instructs during the Bible reading scene, when Massey as dad instructs his son to read from the Bible, as they're doing that to really ratchet up the agony in that sequence. He off screen had instructed Dean to intersperse foul language into the Bible verses, and in order to really upset Massey, and it really did, to the point where he stomped off and threatened to call his lawyers because he was so insulted by what they had done to the Bible. And I think that is, I find that just so funny when you just know what buttons that you're able to push. I think that is delightful toying with the actor, and yet the actor walks away and says this is one of the pivotal roles of his career.
Well, and it's interesting because Massey was such a consummate actor and always was prepared and everything. And he hated working with Dean, who was never prepared and was always kind of, fudging his lines or giving his own readings on things. And it very much fits in context with, I think, the characters. And so I think to that end, Kazan really did a bang-up job of finding the right people to play those parts. What's interesting is that initially the two brothers, I think they were considering Marlon Brando and Montgomery Clift as the brothers, but they were just way too old. And Paul Newman was also on that list, but also too old. And so when they brought James Dean on, he was still, 23 3, I think. Still probably too old, but
yeah, young. Yeah,
he looked young, and I think that
Right.
the two brothers actually looked pretty good for supposedly teenagers.
Richard Davalos looked younger than certainly younger than Dean.
This was also his first performance.
Yeah, right. And yet when you have them on screen, they look remarkably like brothers. I think it's a fantastic choice when they're on screen together and Dean's head is right over Davalos' shoulder in the mom's office during the big confrontation. They are absolutely brothers.
Yeah,
Absolutely. That was great. Lois Smith, Andy. Lois Smith plays Anne. Wow.
as soon as I saw her in that house of sin,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's what's her name? Marjorie Prime. That's
Marjorie Prime.
It's just amazing. Yeah, she's the last living cast member from the movie, and here she is still cranking stuff out. Just did Marjorie Prime and Lady Bird last year, and just is constantly working. She's still has a project in post right now. Just did Sneaky Pete, so she is a busy lady.
How did it do at award season?
This was it was a popular film. It was a popular book. It was a popular film. This is one of those movies that was kind of like critically not as loved as it was by the audiences, but it still did well for itself in the awards circles. The film received 13 wins and 10 other nominations. At the Academy Awards, Jo Van Fleet did win Best Actress in a Supporting Role. James Dean was nominated for Best Actor. This is all in this period of time. This movie and his next two films were all shot in very close proximity. This was the first one that was released. This is the only film that James Dean saw of his performances that was completed. The other two films he never actually saw as completed products before he died. And this came out the same year as Rebel Without a Cause. He was nominated for this film. It was the first posthumous acting nomination in Oscar history, actually. But he did end up losing to somebody else we've talked about on another show, Ernest Borgnine.
Yeah. Ugh.
Well, it's different sorts of roles. And, honestly, I don't know. Frank Sinatra, The Man with the Golden Arm, James Cagney, Love Me or Leave Me, Spencer Tracy, Bad Day at Black Rock. It's a lot of tough performances to go for, I'm not sure who I would have gone with.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Kazan was nominated for Best Director, but lost to Delbert Mann for Marty, and Best Screenplay lost to Patty Chayefsky. At the Golden Globes, it did win Best Picture, and Dean did receive a posthumous Special Achievement Award. This is one of those films, though. It's just very popular. The AFI named it one of the 400 best American films of all time. In 2016, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Film Registry by the Library of Congress as a film that was culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. So it's a film that is marked by time as a very important one, which I think is very interesting, because when I watch it, I think it's pretty good. I don't know if I love it or would say, wow, this is one of the most important films that are out there.
I certainly didn't feel it, but I feel like the fact that James Dean's entire cinematic career, from release date to release date of his three films, spanned 19 months.
Right. Yeah.
Is amazing, and that I think helps to buoy. I think the memory, the collective sort of cinematic memory of the importance of this movie.
Absolutely.
That it was the first and nearly the last.
And just to clarify, I mean, he had been in other projects. He did a lot of TV stuff. I mean,
a lot of TV, right?
From 51 to early 55, he was in a lot of TV stuff, bit parts in films. But yeah, these three films that we're talking about, I mean, those are really kind of the James Dean films.
It is. It's his cinematic career, his major cinematic career. I mean, that's the 19 months, April to November of 56. So it's fascinating to me that and I think that helps. This is a movie that has some fantastic sequences and some fantastic performances, and on the whole, it's a good movie, and I enjoyed watching it. But I didn't find it as transcendent as I think I went into it imagining it to be.
Yeah, right.
This is a movie that obviously the source material is rich, and it is not the only adaptation of Steinbeck's work.
In 1981, there was a TV miniseries that aired in 3 installments. Karen Allen, Ann Baxter, Hart Bachner, Timothy Bottoms, Sam Bottoms, Bruce Boxleitner, Lloyd Bridges, Howard Duff, Warren Oates, and Jane Seymour were all in it. And it was, one of those things. I don't remember it at all, but apparently it was out there.
A lot of B names in that list, 6 of them.
And then what's interesting is that Universal, they have actually, I think, tried before to do another telling of this story with Ron Howard and Paul Atanasio attached to do it. It didn't happen, and then I think they were going to do another one with Tom Hooper directing, Christopher Hampton writing the screenplay, and then I guess right now Gary Ross is attached as a writer-director, Jennifer Lawrence possibly being cast in it. But that was as of 2013. So that's 5 years ago. I don't know if it's still considering, they're still considering it. As of April 2014, Gary Ross had said they're going to do it, but they're going to split it into 2 stories. I have no idea what the status of this is, but I'm curious. It's an interesting tale. You know, these Steinbeck stories, I think, have a lot of staying power. And so it could be something that we do see a remake of one of these days.
I know you have a rich report on the budget.
Oh, it was tough, man. These are those some of these films in these windows. You just can't find information. I looked all over to see if I could find any budget information or information about how much it made at the box office. I couldn't find anything. Actually, I did find one loose statistic, and I don't know. It just said it made $5 million in rentals. I don't know if I'm assuming that's theater rentals for where it played, but I don't really have any more information than that, unfortunately.
I'm sorry, man. I know that's a segment that you really, you look forward to. I think we probably should move into Rank It.
Yes, let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You'll see all the movies we've talked about on this show. Or you can swipe over in your show notes. You can tap the Flickchart word right there. It'll take you right over to this movie in Flickchart where you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up to ours. Where do we start?
First up, East of Eden or The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, the New Me version.
I'm New Me all the way.
So am I. East of Eden or The Host. I'm East of Eden.
I'm the host.
Okay.
All right. Let's do it. Here we go.
1, 2, 3. Rock.
Paper. As it should be.
The Host takes it. East of Eden or Near Dark?
Near Dark.
Really? I'm going to say East of Eden.
Okay. I'll give it to you.
Okay. East of Eden or From Hell? I'm going to say From Hell.
From Hell.
East of Eden or Volunteers? You know where I'm going. Volunteers for me.
Oh, no. Oh, Andy. I'm East of Eden on this one.
You're a big kitty cat. Yes, you are.
All right, here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Scissors. Paper.
Rock. So you took it.
I did. I took it.
East of Eden or The Magnificent Seven, 2016.
Magnificent Seven.
East of Eden for me.
All right, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Rock.
Scissors.
Crush you.
Dang it. East of Eden or Prometheus? East of Eden.
East of Eden.
East of Eden or Ninotchka? I'm going to say East of Eden.
East of Eden.
All right, well, that puts East of Eden at 291 on our chart.
291. All right, so how did that stack up on your personal chart?
My personal chart, it landed at 1170 out of 3943, which is about a 70%.
Yeah, let's see. I'm at 661 out of 1018, which is 35%. There you go.
Wow.
All right. That seems a little bit lower than I expected it. I am surprised at that.
Hater.
I didn't mean to be such a hater. Flickchart has, I think, twisted my intentions. According to the algorithm, what I should be doing is rating this as a 2-star on letterboxd.com/thenextreel. I feel like that's a little bit low, even given my ambivalence toward most of the movie. I'm I think I'm a pretty solid 3.5 stars with a heart.
And that's exactly where I am.
Oh,
3.5
excellent.
stars and a heart.
Oh, good. Well, that's
considering all of our fighting over on Flickchart, I'm surprised.
I know, right? You have now seen all 3 of his films. Any specific reflections as we go into the next one?
It's been a long time. Rebel is the one that I saw first and longest ago. I have not revisited that one since probably college. So I don't remember it very well, but I'm certainly looking forward to checking it out again.
This was a great place to start. Rebel Without a Cause coming up next time. Next Reel couldn't happen without the hard work of Stephen Smart, who runs the Instagram program and does so many of our fancy graphics for the show every single week. And Ben Steerick, who's helping out over there. Ben Lott runs the Blot Spot and all things Twitter. And the Next Reel theme, Ragtime Instrumental, can be found on the SoundCloud page of the fine Eli Catlin. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andy.
As Amazon always doeth.
I've got a 1 star from the fine Jeremy back in December of 2015, who's frustrated.
Oh,
and I think this is going to demonstrate my and possibly our collective ignorance to the book. And I think it's fair to say that most of the complaints about the movie on Amazon are all about the book, that people are upset about the book.
That's fair to say.
1955, racist Hollywood made this with no Lee. How 1955 racist Hollywood made this with no Lee? How the hell do you make this movie with no Lee? He's a central part of the story. And thank goodness there are others who have his back. Severus says pathetic, and Duker says PC fascist, probably a self-hater. I don't know what to do with almost any of that.
You know, that's interesting. Just looking at synopsis of the book, I guess Lee was a Cantonese cook.
Oh, okay.
At one point. I wonder if they opted to drop that and kind of push the German angle because of the time.
Yeah, maybe. Fascinating.
Interesting.
Fascist.
Well, there you go.
Self-haters.
Fascist.
So many fascist self-haters.
I've got a 1 star also complaining about the same reasons. If you have read the book, Don't Bother with This Movie by MDT. I wish that I had read the other low star reviews prior to buying this movie. They all say exactly what I am going to say. If you're thinking to watch the movie to see the characters from the book in full color, don't bother. I couldn't even finish the movie because it was so far off from the book. James Dean's portrayal of Cal is ridiculous, showing Cal as some sort of a half-wit emo precursor, shuffling around in and out of bushes, brows drawn, and what I imagine he thought was ferocity when it really just looked like Neanderthal. And Adam Trask, and where was Lee? Maybe he appeared later, but as I said, I couldn't stomach James Dean's Cal, nor Aron, nor Abra's characters in the movie, so I quit watching. My favorite character, Sam Hamilton, well, he wasn't there either. I'm going to see if the reviews for the more modern version of East of Eden are any better. Shipping was very fast.
Outstanding.
Ending on a high note.
Ending on a high note. Always leave them wanting more.
There you go. I am going to say, Pete, there's going to be a new Amazon review on here soon, complaining about the lack of Cinemascope presentation.
Andy, this is unprecedented. I so wish that you had done that earlier because I would have picked yours. Hallelujah.
Oh, maybe in the future we'll find another opportunity for this.
Please watch the Amazon Rebel, please. Thanks, Amazon.
It's hard to believe that we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
You're telling me producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our originals page when shopping for books and movies we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great conversations.
I was so excited for our big Star Trek film franchise series this season. All those movies adapted from Gene Roddenberry's original 1960s TV show.
As a huge fan, I know that you geeked out over analyzing the adaptations.
Absolutely. From the motion picture to the Kelvin timeline films, seeing the Enterprise crews on the big screen was a dream come true.
Our list of source material isn't just all books and plays. We have the original series in our list of source material. You can rent the episodes to watch and enjoy and support the show in the process.
For our Millennium Trilogy series, we covered films adapted from the original books that launched Lisbeth Salander, The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, The Girl Who Played with Fire, and The Girl Who Kicked the Hornet's Nest.
As much as I love Fincher's version, the original Swedish versions are the way to go. We also did our Die Hard series in season 7.
I can't believe Die Hard and Die Hard 2 were adaptations. Two of the greatest action movies ever.
Well, one of them at least. The other is awfully fun, though. We revisited the classic Mary Poppins for our 1960s movie musical series. A spoonful of sugar always helps the medicine go down.
Old Boy was intense for our Park Chan-wook Vengeance trilogy, and East of Eden and Giant were highlights of our James Dean series.
And a fun time travel mind bender with Predestination to cap things off.
Find all the books behind these adaptations and more at thenextreel.com/originals.
Dive into the source material for your favorite movies. Check it out today, thenextreel.com/originals.